My name is Rachel Moss, and welcome to day two of the High School Playbook. We are going to talk about STEM success, why math and science feel so hard, and how to help. So, as we're all delighted to talk about this topic because this is one that affects so many students and families. STEM classes offer opportunities to explore topics that lead to a variety of rewarding careers. And they are also very popular among students. But these can also be like the make or break classes. When they make you, they make a significant improvement in a student's overall standing, but they are often viewed sometimes as some of the hardest classes. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Why these classes feel so hard and strategies that we can use to help out in any one of those STEM classes. So, my name is Rachel Moss. I'm an executive function coach and instructional support specialist with Educational Connections. I am a proud high school certified educator. I have taught grades 9 through 12 for over 12 years. I know the rigors of the high school classroom. I know how these STEM classes, really affect students. And joining me today is Catherine McWilliams Klein. Catherine, will you please introduce yourself?
Thanks, Rachel. My name is Catherine McWilliams Klein. I am certified 6 through 12. Couple more middle school grades on you, Rachel. I have my master's in education, and I taught in the classroom, primarily medical sciences, for about 10 years. But I've
Wow.
also taught all of the core sciences, you name it. I've probably taught it: biology, physics, chemistry. And anatomy, medical terminology, emergency response. At Educational Connections, I help with executive function students and content tutoring for science and math.
Oh my God, I'm just over the moon that you're here to talk with us about this because not only do you have that classroom experience, but you also have that real world experience in STEM careers. And that's going to be so invaluable for us tonight. So the first thing I want to ask you, Catherine, expert that you are, why is it that the STEM classes always feel so hard for our students?
Rachel, I think that the one word way that I could sum that up is
Mhm.
application. All of the
Mhm.
science, you go from memory to applying it in a multitude of ways. And each time you're applying it, you're using a different set of foundational skills. So,
Mhm.
students that memorize the content early in the science classes will be okay. But as soon as they hit those harder high school classes, that technique becomes unsustainable because you get stuck in the decision tree essentially.
Yeah, I see that a lot in my sessions, students that are taking like AP environmental science, AP bio, that way you just described it, like stuck in the decision tree. That does happen to so many students, and that level of memorization that you need in order to be able to apply, it can just like grind the gears to a halt. So I want to take 1 second away from our conversation because I realize I neglected to mention that we want you to put your questions in the chat as soon as you have them. So Catherine and I are going to be having a great conversation, but we also want to see your questions. Sometimes, the question that you ask, we're actually going to be like, oh yeah, we're talking about that right now. Let's do this. And then we also have a Q&A at the end. So give us your questions as soon as you think of them. Don't ask about them. Don't wait on them. So um, in our webinar today, we are really going to be talking about these hidden skills behind STEM success. What are these skills, Catherine, that we need to be successful in these classes?
Thanks, Rachel. For math and science, specifically, students need to be well organized and planned out. You have to
Mhm.
tackle each piece of your science class independently of each other and also balance your other classes. I like to create a schedule for students that blocks out content specific time in their week to make sure that They're not merging like, hey, in an hour of my homework, I've hit all six of my topics in school. We really want to narrow that focus down and set aside a day for science. And then how does that day turn into what am I going to do for the rest of the week for science instead of merging them together? When you plan out your week, you're able to focus on the skills that you need to demonstrate for your assessments and identify weak areas. If you generally study, oh, I'm going to reread my notes, it's hard to
Mhm.
pinpoint strengths and weaknesses from generic
Yeah.
or vague studying.
So you're really talking about that we need to have really strong executive function skills in order to excel. Because if what you described before, if everything is kind of building on each other, like we're memorizing everything, but then we have to apply it. Like I know, for example, I have a student who is in a science program where he has a ton of lab work.
Mhm.
And supporting those executive function skills not only means that he can get into the lab, it also means that he can do all the lab notes, that he can, plan his schedule so that he has time for everything. I mean, so that, like, would you agree that executive function skills are really important here?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
something that you can't get around. Math specifically, most of the schedules that I see my students on, the math skill changes. It builds every single day. And
Hmm.
so we have to stop and pause. And on day three, go look back at day one and two to make sure that you still have that as you're going through the unit. But the teacher is going to keep going forward, regardless of if you get it or not. So you have
Yeah.
to take the time to pinpoint those weaknesses instead of at the unit test, not knowing what was happening in the beginning of the unit and having to review everything. A
Yeah.
well prepared student is able to use that targeted approach as it comes to unit tests and save time and energy to study instead of studying everything and anything just to be safe.
Yeah. I really hear you in this talking about understanding the why versus the how. you know like making sure that when you and I were talking like earlier, when we talk about our students and stuff, I remember you telling me an example from chemistry that really illustrates this idea of why versus how in science. Can you tell us about that and how our, curiosity questions maybe can help the executive function skills that the struggles that kids have in these subjects?
With chemistry specifically, we learn the fundamentals of the periodic table to start the year, but then it becomes a long part of the year of studying behavior. And
Mhm.
that is less factual for the student, and it becomes kind of where you have to predict what the elements like to do or what they tend to do. And that concept in and of itself throws students off because they're used to memorizing. So asking the whys and the how helps students understand the patterns and the behaviors of how things bond, why they like to bond certain ways, how they bond in one with one element versus another element. But if you take it on face value and say, okay, these two things bond, you're only getting one piece of the puzzle. Asking why and how allows you to bond that element with any option that your teacher could give you, but it requires you to have that curious mindset.
Yeah. So I love how you've laid out for us the foundation of why this is difficult. And I think that one of the things that really helps any student is having great strategy. So I think we should get into the strategies right now. The first one that we're going to talk about is visual and hands-on learning. And we're doing something in a lot of our webinars this week talking about tech assists, ways that you can get a skill, but then if you already have it, you can use some technology to help you out. So I have a ton of students in my sessions that are in science programs, and visual notes are such a great way to learn. Would you tell us about like some visual and hands-on learning approaches?
cannot emphasize enough how much I love visuals when it comes to science. I love, love, love them. And when my students don't love, love, love them, we have to go find the pre made visual notes and work with those because they get scared when they see visuals like our slide has. And I'm able to support them with, hey, you don't have to create a masterpiece over here.
Yeah.
We have templates, we have resources that we can pull skeletons of, and you can add your own personal touch to them. Don't be overwhelmed when you see fancy visual notes. We can personalize it to your
Yeah.
student. This
Yeah.
is going to be across the board, no matter how your learner learns, a way to help them organize the notes when it comes to the brain. So some students will say, "Oh, well, I like to listen to my lecture. I like to um, just read my text without color code. I don't need a picture." But studies show that with color and pictures, that association increases the short term to long term pipeline.
Yeah.
So, although they are used to not needing those with science because it's processes and mechanisms and those decision trees, like we talked about, it's really
Mhm.
helpful to see the flow and when students create these products on their own, no matter how they look like, it's essentially how their brain is working out on the paper. And
Yeah.
then they create it and they're like, "Oh, wow, that makes sense. Does this make sense to you?" And I'm like, it doesn't need to. This is your brain. Like if it connects the pieces how you learned it, we are good to go. And you're more likely to remember it when you create it on your own.
Yeah.
And it shows a high level of understanding when you're able to take one source and create your own as well. So it's indicative of somebody that has a better grasp on the material.
Yeah. I have a student that he is in a math-based computer science program, and he's taking Calc 3 right now.
Hmm.
And so he and I worked together when he was in high school, and now we're working together as he's in college. And we started working on visual notes. It was something he was really reluctant to do in high school for those reasons. Like,
Hmm.
I can't draw. And
Hmm.
then I said, okay. I said, can you make a flow chart? Because
Hmm.
I was like, listen, I think now is the time. And so he just calls them his flowchart notes. And he's like, they're ugly, but they work. He uses
Hmm.
different colors of highlighter. He draws arrows or
Yep.
boxes, and then he associates different shapes with different
Hmm.
formulas and processes. I also have a student who is taking AP Environmental Science who is very artistically gifted. And she's using this, like actually making comic book pages
Hmm.
for like key concepts. And every comic book page has central graphics, definitions. I love this type of thing for STEM because it's so customizable. Do you have
Hmm.
any insight into like the tech assist of like tablet-based, visuals or hands-on learning?
Yeah, I know we talked about this earlier before this session. The tablets for students these days are a really great hands-on tool. You have like a pencil when students get older. High schools and colleges now have also allowed students to have access to them. But the drawing in and of itself feels like paper. It saves, it uploads to the student's account, but I'm hearing really good feedback from the students that the tablet based notes in the way that it transitions um, scribbles to looking like actual text on the paper,
Yeah.
essentially. You can move around the text, you can move around the pictures, drag and drop pictures, kind of like a slide that you're manipulating. Students are really used to using technology, and when they have access to these tools, it encourages them to take notes because it's typically in their preferred manner.
Yeah.
But the ability to sync it with everything and drag and drop really allows students to real time um, update their notes, and students are likely to keep up with them compared to the long time it takes to drawing.
Yeah, so we have a question. What is the name of the technology on the tablets for drawing in notes? I really like two programs. One is called Notability, the other one is
Hmm.
called Good Notes. I like both of these because they're very native to that pencil or stylus. If you have an iPad with the Apple Pencil, you
Hmm.
can, write all over it. And then one thing I always do say to everybody I work with, the technology does not create the skill. So if
Hmm.
you have the skill of note taking and then you add in the tablet, you are reinforcing or also streamlining. But buying a tablet and an Apple Pencil doesn't create the skill of
Hmm.
taking these types of notes. Always
Hmm.
start with pencil and paper. If the skill develops, if this is a good thing for the learner, try out a tech assist because it's going to give more, you know?
Hmm.
And I'm noticing too in our chat here, we have some questions because I think this is a great one for a student who is motivated in these classes. But what about students who like aren't as motivated? I know like my background is in the humanities. When I was in science classes, I did my best, but I was kind of like, this is hard because it's like not for me. How can like real world relevance help students?
Real world relevance for students usually is that light bulb moment where they realize that the information is for their future selves. The students that I work with, regardless of where they are in their academic journey, I ran in college. I was a college athlete, and so I can hit most kids with the athlete background. But a lot of my kids also are interested in medicine, and so we will get a hold of their goals and then backtrack how these classes will support them getting to their goals and replicate what they'll have to be doing in college and in the real world in their job. For students that might not be, into athletes. I get most of them with that, Rachel, but
Yeah.
then we'll go into their hobbies and we
Mhm.
will deep dive into what are they interested in and how can I connect it to something real world based. I have
Right.
the privilege of teaching biology, so I can make almost any connection because it's all around us. Chemistry is something that always fascinates students because we've seen it in and around us, but biology is always a day-to-day thing where I can grab an example on the spot. So students really are like, okay, I can see that, and how this course needs to be taken seriously.
Yeah. I gotta say, like, I knit, and I have never been more into mathematics than when I'm like knitting a sweater. Because you have to be able to figure out like the way that the number of stitches you have per inch are going to
Mhm.
translate into a garment. Like, will it fit over my head? Will it
Mhm.
fit a grown woman or will it fit a toddler when I'm when I'm done? So there are so many considerations. I love that if we can relate things to what students are interested in, and obviously they're going to be far cooler than me with my knitting needles. But it is a nice way to have that relevance. I know we have a lot of folks from Virginia here. In my sessions, folks from Virginia, we have science fair season where
Mhm.
every student has a project, and this is actually
Mhm.
something that I do in my coaching sessions. Okay, I get it. Science isn't, your thing, but let's think about what you're interested in. Your science project can be about something you love, something you want to know more about. I've had
Mhm.
science projects about the chemical reactions in baking,
Mhm.
in cubic inches or centimeters in like car motors and stuff, like stuff I really don't understand, but
Mhm.
it's fascinating because it's all around us. And we might too, if we have a student who is struggling, or if we even have a student who is, doing a great job, there may be some, warning signs like that these STEM classes are really getting to students. What are some things like we should look for with our favorite student?
Warning signs in the STEM classes, there's a variety. I like to bucket it to the kind of the core reason. We have some students that view long or intense studying as I don't know, something that they don't have to do because they're super
Yeah,
smart and they may do those things, but in class they may be like, "Oh no, I just got an AI ace this test and I didn't have to do anything about it." That's super common in high school. And
mhm,
then what students will do is they'll say, "Well, if they don't have to study, I don't have to study. I
right.
heard them say they didn't have to," and it'll kind of start that peer pressure situation. I'll also see students that don't enjoy the studying process. They haven't found that aha moment for themselves, the click to the goal, if you will. And then they'll start coming up with excuses such as blaming teachers, or saying like, "Oh, the teacher said it wasn't a big deal," or "Hey, well, I can't do my homework. She didn't post this or she didn't do this. I'm waiting on this grade." And we can normally start to mold that mindset into more of a growth oriented mindset. And we
Yeah,
can literally script out a way to approach our teachers. How do we react to situations with peers? And a lot of times, the skills that they're avoiding, homework and studying, we're able to see the students and say, "Hey, my friend, we've had this to do task for the last 2 sessions. You haven't gotten to it. Let's start right here, right now. Let's take this off your plate and get your to do list reorganized. We don't need to avoid this anymore." So that accountability comes into play when we're seeing students on a regular basis. But a lot of students wait for those test scores to dip. And I always
mm,
tell students there is no reason to have your feet to the fire before you
yeah.
make changes because it's never going to feel comfortable, and the earlier you do it, the better you'll feel throughout the whole semester.
I have to say, I noticed something. I call it peacocking. And I see this so, and I've talked to my students a lot that I really encountered this when I was in college, where there would be students that would be like, they'd show up like, "Oh yeah, I wrote this paper in 20 minutes." But I noticed that in a lot of our STEM classes, you have kids that are like, they when they talk to each other, it's like, "Yeah, I didn't even study. I got 104%." Like that kind of thing. And I've had conversations with students in my sessions like, "You know what, honey? It may be that that is what this person's doing, or it may be that this person is working, like you're not seeing them crying at 3 a.m.
Mhm,
or so like afraid that they're not going to get it, or working with a private tutor that you don't even know exists.
mhm,
I think
mhm,
sometimes like the way that students will position themselves, and I
mhm,
always use the word peacocking because like without the tail, it is a scrawny little bird. But it can make itself look a lot bigger than it is. And I think that that's a level of discernment that, we need to impart to our students, that we got to like, almost like a swimming metaphor. We have to just keep our eyes on our own lane. As soon as you look over your shoulder, if you're a competitive swimmer, you're going to fall behind, you know? Keep going at your pace. If you have to study more, if
mhm,
you need these different supports, that's going to be best for you. And so I think
mhm.
it's good for us to know like what could be a warning sign so we can catch it before, we have any like grade dips, like you said. So we want to talk some more strategies. Um, the difference between like passive and active studying, because I think like even what we're talking about, if it is true that somebody just like closes their eyes and takes in all the information, what's really like active studying, and how does that really help in STEM?
For active studying, we are challenging students to actually engage with the material, do something. When students, especially in middle school, they have study guides and they're able to always have the notes. It's it's got a lot of support when we're in middle school, and
Yeah.
students are used to that, and then they move to high school, and I see it's a mixed bag. Sometimes they have a study guide, sometimes they don't. Sometimes their teacher gives them copies of the notes, sometimes they don't. So I always tell students that this is their time to be really engaged in the process of studying, and rereading materials given to you by somebody else is not engaging your
Yeah.
brain. So we talk through a few different ways to bring it into our long-term memory through engaging with it. So we practice problems with all of the sciences. Students always think I'm joking. With chemistry, there's practice problems. With biology, there are practice problems.
Yeah.
With physics, it's just like I call it science math. It's just like a math class. So we do practice problems. When you
Hmm.
explain concepts out loud, even to a parent or a friend, it gives your brain that ability to figure out what you don't know. In your brain, if it's silent and you're just reading it kind of all meshes together. You don't really know what you knew without reading it. When you
Yeah.
have to verbally explain it, you might stop. You might say, like, oh, this one came before this one. And instantly, you don't know it as well as you thought. If you're
Yeah.
reading it from a script, you're going to get it 100% of the time.
Mhm.
So I'll tell students, hey, go explain it to a parent. And if you can answer questions that your parent has, it's indicative of you're good to go. If they ask you a question and you're immediately like, I need to go to the Google machine, it's indicative that you need to do some more studying. With flashcards, your
Uh-huh.
flashcards typically are going to be made of the end end product of your science classes. So a flashcard in a science might be name this compound. It won't necessarily be definition based. So then the student would have to practice the skill of when these two elements combine, what is their chemical formula name? And so the chemical formula name would be on the other one. So when we say flashcards, we're not talking about definitions at this point. I do love a
Yeah.
good flashcard.
Yeah. One of the things I always coach my students to do in my sessions is get out your old homeworks for whatever STEM class you're in and redo the problems that you missed because you're going to have teacher feedback in some way, shape, or form. Redo the ones that you missed and analyze what concepts you're missing. So not just like redo a problem, but look at like, is it a certain theory? Is it a certain
Mhm,
formula?
mhm,
You know, another thing that I've been noticing with like especially passive study, I've been noticing so many students that I work with will say things like, well, I mean, I opened up my Chromebook in school and I just, I didn't take notes because I had my AI assistant take
mhm,
notes. And that falls in the passive
mhm,
category
mhm.
because you're not engaging in the thing. You're counting on like a robot to do the work for you. It's not the same as creating notes and then engaging in these processes. And we have some more strategies to help with this. I want to talk because you were talking about like paired studying and working together and explaining
Mhm.
things to others. I want to talk about one that I use a lot, and we have a blog entry that you can read to learn more about it. It's called Rubber Duck Debugging. Catherine, have you ever used this before?
I technically have, but I love your explanation of it. Go ahead, Rachel.
Okay, so I have my rubber duck is not a rubber duck, but this came out of the computer programming world, and it was a process where if you're debugging code, you have to go through code line by line by line, and you think that the code is supposed to do one thing, but it just ain't. And so computer programmers started like when you have like a little desk toy talking aloud to the desk toy, telling the toy what the thing is supposed to do. And then also because it's a toy, you are assuming that it knows nothing. So on my desk, I have this
Mm.
little Pinocchio pencil cup, which is great because he is stupid. And it also kind of breaks down like if you're talking to a toy, it's also kind of like not
Mhm.
as serious and so you can kind of get out of your head a little bit. The frustration that we were talking about earlier, like the warning signs, it's a way to engage with the problem while also having a way for you to like get away from maybe how you feel about it. Would you tell us more about like paired studying and also like resources like Khan Academy?
Of course, for paired studying, encourage students to be courageous. I have them look around their classroom and identify high achieving students, students that they notice get great grades, students that are engaged in class, ask a lot of questions. And I encourage them to start a conversation with that student and see if they'd be open to working together. Most often, specifically high schoolers, they like to work with their friends.
Yeah.
And then we have to problem solve, is their friend as motivated as you? Is your friend distracting you? Or do they cancel all the time? So I always tell students to surround themselves with students that have habits that they want to encourage. And we pair up. We don't have to be studying the same thing at the same time, but having that buddy, if you will, number one, hold you accountable to the time that you say that you're going to be studying. But
Yeah.
B, you're able to ask questions in real time. Like, hey, did you understand question 11? And your partner can help you, and it kind of keeps you going as well. And students will often have to set up their own arrangements for this. So I have some that will go to the library, I have some that will go to a friend's house. That helps establish the routine of finding a spot and a system that works for you.
Mhm.
If it's in your own house, we'll say, hey, you and your friend need to sit at your dining room table. You're not going to go chill out on the bed on your computers. You're going to have an area that we agree on. We're going to have a plan for what you're going to work on. And the paired studying is to help students feel like they can be successful around somebody that they're comfortable with without that feeling of a parent being around. So it's usually really successful. And
Yeah.
some students call you'll see the word body double for motivation
Mhm.
techniques of having somebody study next to you really like makes you want to study as well. Khan
Absolutely.
Academy is notoriously available for all classes, but they have the built-in curriculum. I'd say there are, of course, different curriculums out there. There's different companies that have curriculums, but Khan Academy has the largest library of continuous curriculums that link into middle school and high school curriculums, so you can trust it. If you go to a random science website, I'm sure you can find some lessons that are in order and they go through the content. But Khan Academy will have an AP certified course for AP Chem, and you can trust that it's the same exact lessons that your students would be covering in the same order, and the practice problems are aligned to the AP test. So
Absolutely.
Khan Academy is a resource that we trust,
Yeah.
and it always has practice problems.
Yeah. And the other thing too is like what you explained earlier. They need to understand why they're doing things and how these things work. So it's like if you just put something into, some like AI robot thing, it's definitely gonna spit out an answer, but that's not gonna really help because
Mhm,
you have to be able to explain why you're doing this, why these things
mhm,
work. So all of
mhm,
these strategies, if you're working solo, get out your rubber duck. If you've got a friend, that's
mhm,
probably the best one. And then if you need that extra support,
mhm,
something really high quality like Khan Academy is the way to go. I mean, if you've never explored it before, take a look at it because every single thing, there are videos. If you miss a question, it tells you
mhm,
why.
mhm,
It's
mhm,
amazing. It's kind of like having a one-on-one teacher, when you
mhm.
need it sometimes. And so, I see some questions in the chat already about like supporting students that are struggling. Like when should we bring in extra support?
I work with students that have come in at all time of the year, Rachel. So I've
Mhm.
seen a large variety of when students start services. I will say extra support. The signs and when to bring it in is when you see your student being frustrated, when you see them avoiding tasks and you see behaviors that start to change. You won't necessarily always see a dip in test scores. I work with a lot of kids that are AB students
Mhm.
because even though their grades on paper are okay, the like mental load of studying ineffectively is taking a toll on them. So
Yeah,
don't think that all of our students have bad grades and that's what brings them in, or that students start in the beginning of the year. I have students start in the middle of the summer, in
yeah,
between breaks, in between semester, like in the middle of a semester. And so it's really your gauge on the student and where they are and how much of their day-to-day life is being impacted by their academic habits. Waiting until report cards is okay, but I hate when students can't see that success before grades are published.
yeah,
I will say though, I've had a couple that joined a week or two before finals. We got them together, we got them passing, but it was by the seat of our pants. So
hmm,
I also encourage parents to reach out early before that
yeah,
there's like actually grades involved because it's harder to get your student the support.
yeah. So, and we have a question like, what are some examples of outside support? So I want to like start that one off. There's a lot that you can do. My
Mhm,
thing is always start with the school.
mhm,
So your whatever district, whatever school your student is in, reach out to the science teacher, the counselor. Like for example, I worked in a district that had a robust what they called peer tutoring
mm, mhm,
program where they would pair students in every class, but
mhm,
a lot of students in STEM classes with older students who had already taken the class or with students who were in the same grade who were in perhaps a more advanced class or were top learners in the class. And that was so effective because not only do you have the benefits that you were talking about earlier, Catherine, of like working with a peer, but also you have people who know the expectations of the class and the teacher.
mhm,
So it's
mhm,
like that to me, that's always the magic bullet, where it's
mhm,
like not only are we getting the content, but it's like, oh man, I'll tell you what, Miss Howell, sometimes the way she explains this thing in algebra, I got confused too. So now you have somebody that not only understands the material, but you have somebody that understands what they're going through in the classroom. And that's
mhm,
just amazing. And of course, at Educational Connections, we not only have folks who are executive function coaches, like us, we have people who provide one-on-one subject tutoring. So like for example, my like we know Catherine, she's like the science lady. So it's like if
mhm,
you have a student that needs executive function and subject support, we
mhm,
can find that coach. Like in the students I work with, I have, kids that we're definitely working on executive function all over, but I'm in the humanities. So I'm coaching writing. I work with students that are writing like rhetoric papers in college.
mhm,
So we have a really great group team of people and we can provide that, but I always think it's best to start with the school and then look at the resources that are outside the school. And I can't, I mean, it is what it is. I love what we do with for kids at Educational Connections. I can't say enough good there. So before we get into Q&A, I want to do a little plug for tomorrow. So tomorrow I am going to be talking about the topic of stress less, learn more, helping
mhm,
anxious teens find success in school. So if I know we have some high schoolers joining us today, so I'm going to talk directly to the high schoolers for just a second. If you've ever been anxious about your academics, this is a great webinar. For the parents, if your favorite high schooler is anxious about their academics, we're
mhm,
going to talk strategies to help. If you are interested in anything with educational connections, you can scan the QR code. I know that there is going to be a link in the messages, and you can schedule a call with one of our three amazing professionals here. We offer tutoring, we offer executive function coaching, test prep, college consulting. Catherine, we've had some questions about like executive function. Would you tell us just a little bit about our executive function sessions?
Of course. Our executive function students will come in with background knowledge from the parents. Your program manager will literally hand pick somebody from a
Yeah.
list of people based on your student's personality. So it is like super specific.
Mhm.
You'll see my kid would love somebody that is humorous and laid back. I want somebody that is rigid and not laid back. They have a huge list, and you're able to talk with the program managers, and then they start to develop who would fit your student. From there, you have a call where the tutor, if it was me, we'll talk one on one to make sure
Yeah.
that I know your concerns. If you forget anything, sometimes parents like to emphasize certain things about their student, and we will go over what to expect in the session. And that typically for executive function skills will start out with an inventory of how your student is feeling about how strong they are in the variety of executive function strategies.
Yeah.
So, homework, studying, note taking, um, revising papers, organizing projects. Will go through their own strengths and weaknesses according to themselves, and then we'll match it to the parents' version, and we'll come up with a specific plan to target what the student is weak and open to changing. From there, we will have goals with the student to help them meet the goals that we set in the beginning. And as things change, as they fly the nest, if you will, we typically find that students will keep setting higher and higher goals and will work towards that. And as students are doing better, you can change what we're meeting about, the frequency. Sometimes parents will say, okay, great, now that we've got the executive function under control, can you specifically help in math? Or
Mhm.
vice versa. Hey, let's get math under control and then move to executive function. Then sometimes we can plan out the future. Hey, now that we are good to go for this semester, finals are coming up, we should be good to go there. Can you look into the beginning of next semester? Let's start to plan that out together and look forward to January. For summer, we'll make plans of how to not get so behind in summer. And we'll be doing that in the spring semester before summer even starts.
Absolutely. And let's get into Q&A. If folks want to, I'm going to take a minute here so folks can maybe get some more questions into our chat. We do have a couple. I want to address one where Alice asked, do our sessions pertain to a student with ADHD? Absolutely. So we all of the educators that we have on our team have experience working with students who deal with ADHD, students who are on the autism spectrum, students who have all sorts of exceptionalities. So, as Catherine mentioned, like when you call in and you talk with one of our program managers, they are going through our team and figuring
Mhm,
out who not only is going to be a good fit personally with the
mhm,
student, but also whose academic pedigree fits the
mhm,
needs of the student. So
mhm,
it's unlike anything else. There are lots of different organizations out there, but that pairing process, there is
mhm,
something magical about it, and it's
mhm,
wonderful. Okay, so we got a little question here. How can we help our student get the help that they need without my husband and I spending hours each night so that our son can pass the class? And then this goes on to say he's leveraging tutoring at school, but it has limiting impact. And we as parents are constantly reminding about flashcards, notes, etc. So, do you have any insight, Catherine, like how to help this particular student?
I love this question. I always tell parents and students tutoring is only effective if you have clear and measurable goals. And
Mm,
so, tutoring at school, if your student is going to that tutor and being like, "Yes, can we please review some elements? Let's do our homework together." That's what
yeah,
the tutor's going to do 9 times out of 10.
yeah,
Should your student be going to tutoring for homework help or about the elements? Maybe, maybe not. But the tutor is not looking at the overall plan, the strengths and weaknesses of your student. They're usually doing whatever your student comes to them with. We will work with students, identify what can I help them with? Sometimes what can the parent help with depending on the time, and what
yeah,
can the tutor help with? Hey, I did this with you. We completed this. Take this question or take this concept to the tutor, and I want you to do 5 practice problems with that tutor and let me know how it goes on Thursday. So it
yeah,
usually becomes a tag team type situation if you're not seeing the results because that person's working with your student. It may just not be in the um, goal oriented way because students will go in and be like, thinking about homework today. Let's do that. So we'll create a plan for them to maximize the help that they're getting as well. And I always tell students if we can create a better plan for them, nobody has to be sitting at any table for any amount of hours.
yeah,
I want to take things off your students' plate and they can fight with me. They don't have to fight with you at the dinner table. We can come up with a plan, less time at the dinner table. You don't have to hover over them because I'm going to say, you're going to come back to us on Thursday. We're going to go over what you completed on Wednesday with the tutor. You should have
hmm,
done this homework on Tuesday. And we're able to really have that conversation by Thursday if they did or did not and adjust their scheduling from there.
yeah,
And students seeing that kind of data are usually like, okay, I'm gonna come to Catherine and I'm gonna be done with things. We had a plan, I'm gonna stick with it. And if they don't, we'll rearrange it to help them set goals that they can stick to and that are sustainable.
yeah. I also think that that's like so many of the points that you brought up. I think those are also things that, families can try together. So it's like, okay, you're gonna go into tutoring instead of just, bringing your homework and doing your homework. Let's maybe set two things that you can do so that this homework is even easier to do on your own, you know?
Mhm.
So we have a question about a student who doesn't like school because he says it's a waste of time. How can we help a kid who doesn't want to do homework because it's only 5% of the grade? If I had $1 for every time, I'm not laughing because this is particularly funny, but because this is a type of logic that is not always logical to me. Do you hear that a lot, Catherine, where it's like it's only 5% of the grade, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
one of the things that's a really hard one because there's like you can tell that this student he is not thinking about things in an illogical manner, but it's also a nonsensical thing. So in these kinds of cases, for example, I had a student that I was working with that would never do her chemistry homework because it was not graded
Mhm.
and could not figure out why she was getting consistent D's or the highest she was getting was a very low C on all of the tests. And so, we're working in an executive function session. So we set goals of self-advocacy. So, okay, you're asking me, who is not your chemistry teacher, about this. Why even like do this work? So we set a self-advocacy goal. We also set a goal to look at the homework together, not to do it, to look at it together and to try to see if there was any reason why anyone, not her, but just some random kid on the corner of Walk and Don't Walk, would even think about doing it. So the first thing it did was it like depersonalized it. Like, look, I'm not going to make you do the work. We're just going to talk about it. But then we set the goal of self-advocate to your teacher. And what this student found out was Everything on the tests was literally in the homework. Like that the teacher would give the homework, and every homework, one question on the homework ended up on the test. So if you had, or like between 1 and 3, so if you had like 15 homeworks or 5 homeworks, all of those questions are reappearing. So essentially the homework was practicing for the test. And this is not something that entered into the kid's mind naturally. This is something we had to get out of them, you
Mhm.
know? Do you have any like insight into this one, Catherine, about like this? I don't want to do school. It's only 5% of the thing.
Oh my gosh, I was waiting for this moment. Here goes my athlete example. I had to give it earlier.
Yeah.
And that was my student's question. Like, hey, I have so many homeworks and they're not worth that much. I should just skip one this week. And
Mm-hmm.
I said, if you think about athletes, the pros, right? We're going all in, we're going NFL. You'll notice that even on TV, they warm up every time. They do their stretches, they do their throwing. Even if they know they can make that throw, they know they
Yeah.
can make that kick, they warm up 100% of the time. Can they do those things? Can they attend that event without doing that? Yes. But they do that warm up every time because it guarantees them
Right.
success in the long run. So you don't see the consequence of skipping the 5% in the moment. You see it on the test.
Mm-hmm.
And that I can guarantee you because we can follow the cookie crumbs, similar to what you said, usually on the test and track it back to you skipped a small homework and it had valuable skills or questions just so happened that the teacher recycled. And you don't know it in the moment that you're skipping the homework, but we do 100% of our work 100% of the time because that's what makes us successful in the long term.
Yeah.
And I agree with you, Rachel. It has to be their idea. We have to lead them into it,
Mm-hmm.
and make it their own idea as a teenager. And
Yeah.
typically it does start to click for them.
Yeah. So we have some questions about our sessions. How do you keep the student engaged virtually through the services you offer? And then the second question that you have in our webinar chat, Rachel, about the cost range of services. All of that is on our website, and I'm sure there's going to be a link in the chat that'll take you directly to that. But okay, so this is the big one for me because you think like, okay, um, here's like you're gonna work online together, like how are you gonna keep a kid engaged? The big one for me is that every one of our sessions is focused on that kid's work. So I always describe this is not more school after school. It's not like
Mhm.
your kid's gonna come into a session, and some nice well-meaning lady like me is gonna be like, today we're gonna talk about, and then they have to listen to a lecture. It's really focused on like I talk to my students like, what are your pain points? What do you want to what do you want to avoid? Do you want to avoid a bad grade? Do you want to avoid like sometimes if kids aren't that engaged with school, I bring it down to brass tacks. Are you sick of people nagging you about this work? Are you sick of your
Mhm.
math teacher having your name written on the board? So I really engage students, and I know so many of the folks on our team do this because we are working with their work. What do you think
Mhm.
about that, Catherine, the engagement factor?
Yeah, I'll actually piggyback off of Melissa in the chat as well. The one-on-one sessions with their work. So we will be asking to look through the students' Schoology, their Google Classroom. They'll be pulling their papers out of their backpack. But the platform that we use is super collaborative, I guess
Yeah.
is the best word. And so, like, I'm typing on the screen in front of the student is typing on the screen along with
Mhm.
me. We're working on things together. A lot of times, while the student is like working, oh, I think they died. You can hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, great. Uh, they died. Okay. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
If
All good.
problem example, I'll work it out on my screen while they're looking down and doing it on their own, and we'll look and see if we solved it the same way, if we got the same answer. And a lot of times it helps students A, see a different way of getting to the answer, but also be like, oh, I skipped that, whoopsies, and they'll go fix it.
Yeah.
So I actually haven't had a bored student, I would say. That's one I haven't,
Wow.
because we're talking, we're writing together, and they're engaging in the computer and or their papers.
We also our platform is called Lesson Space. I always describe it as if Zoom and a smart board
Mm,
in a school had a baby. It isn't like Zoom is for business. Lesson Space is for education. Like yesterday, I was working with one of my university students. We used our co-browser, so a collaborative browser in the session itself. We logged on to her university databases and we're looking for sources for her research paper together.
yeah.
So it's like it's like you think like, oh, if somebody's there, then they can like do something. 99% of their work is online. So like if you have somebody in your home, what are they going to do? Look over your kid's shoulder. On our platform, their work is online. We are looking at the work together. It's like there's no wasted time. It's like as soon as they're in that hour, it's like, "Hey, how was your weekend? Let's get to it." You know? So, I think we can do like one more little question here. So we do have a question about strategies for kids who have test or quiz anxiety. So I'm gonna say, Renee, that is an amazing question. I'm really going to encourage you, if you have the time, if it fits in, attend the webinar that we're doing tomorrow night, which is all about anxiety. But test anxiety, and you're also talking about oh, and then also, Melissa in our chat has answered a question that we have about college consulting. We do offer college consulting, but the anxiety question. So I think like in this question, you're asking about like the amount of time that it takes to complete things, also performance and grade. Test anxiety is something that if we use planning, and if we also can separate out what we know from what we don't know. I would really encourage you, Renee. We have a great strategy that we use called the Stoplight Study Guide. We have blog posts about it. A bunch of our coaches use it. But it's a strategy that helps students understand what they know from what they don't know. A lot of test anxiety results from the fact that if a student is paying attention in class and doing what they're supposed to do, they are actually going to retain 60 to 70%. That's doing the work, the homework, taking notes. But when we go to study, we kind of get over like, oh, I know all this stuff. I know all this stuff because you're retaining most of it. You have to tease out that 30 to 40%, and that's the difference between the C and the A. And it's also something that if you spend your time truly on the things that you don't know, you end up reducing that test anxiety. So that's just like in a nutshell. But again, it's called the Stoplight Study Guide, which is a great way to identify the knowns from the unknowns for studying, and it'll help reduce that. Um, so I think this has been an absolutely amazing webinar tonight. Catherine, I just love talking with you. We're so delighted that you all were here with us this evening. We hope to see you tomorrow for day 3 of the high school playbook. And, thanks for everything, and we'll see you next time.